Hi, I'm Austin Jarrett from ALLETT Mowers. This is episode 4 of our seed trial. It's about a month now since we started this seed trial, and you can see behind me now that the grass is really coming along nicely. We sowed these tubs as well, and these tubs were sown 3 weeks ago, and we wanted to try out a few different things and see exactly close up what we were getting from these different seed mixtures. So you may remember, but the seed mixtures that we used, we called this one Fine 1, and Fine 1's a 90% fescue and 10% brown top bent. Fine 2 is similar, we just changed the percentages slightly, so we've got 80% fescue and 20% brown top bent. So we'll get a lot more bent in this one. Then we went to Quality 1, Quality 1 and Quality 2, which we expect to be normal, high quality turf type for lawns. When we're looking at the fine ones, we're expecting to generate a lawn that's more like a golf green. And we're going to have a look at how the maintenance of that is affected as the season goes on. But Quality 1, we've got 70% ryegrass and a 13% slender red fescue, and the Quality 2 is a 40% ryegrass, 35% slender creeping red fescue, a 20% chewing fescue, and a 5% brown top bent. This one is 100% ryegrass, and we wanted to try this one as well because we know that this is going to give us stripes, and with the newer varieties now of the ryegrasses, we're expecting to get a much more slender leaf, and there are a lot of advantages to this ryegrass. And then finally, we've got a grass mixture here, which is for shady areas. We all have that shady area in the garden. 80% fescue, it's 15% smooth stalk meadow grass, and we've also got a 5% brown top bent in there. So what have we learned so far? Well, absolutely and really clearly what we've got is the 3 with the ryegrass are really romping ahead. More so, we're getting more coverage and more plants are in this 100% ryegrass. And of course, we know that ryegrass, one of the big advantages is that you get much easier establishment, and so far our tubs are absolutely proving that. The finer varieties here, they're not struggling, the plant populations are lower, and of course you can see that the blades of grass are already so much finer than they are on the ryegrasses here. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. The one that's not germinated quite so well is the Shady mixture here, which is the 80% fescue. But it's coming along nicely, and we'll see how that thickens out. The other thing that we did with the tub trial was we separated, we sowed each one of the seeds on top of the indigenous topsoil that we have in this garden. And then what we did was we covered the seed up with 3 different mediums. The closest third to me on all of these tubs was a compost. The second one was a sand soil mixture, so very, very sandy. And then final third there was with the same soil that we used in the base. One thing that's become really clear on that, we had the very earliest germination from the compost topping on this. And both the sand and the indigenous soil were much slower. The only weeds that we've got are in the indigenous soil. We didn't get any weeds in the compost or the sand, or certainly not to date, but you can see some of the small weeds that there are in here. So that of course is one of the risks with using the indigenous soil, and we'll just talk briefly about the weeds that are appearing when we go and have a look in the lawn a little bit later. So we're really encouraged by this compost topping, and we're going to have a look at it in another video of how we're going to do that to thicken up your lawn by using a compost top dressing in combination with a reseeding. So let's go and have a look at the actual lawns themselves. So here we are on the actual lawn itself. We're 4 weeks in from seeding, and you can actually see the whole lawn showing the 5 main mixtures that we've got, the 6th one being the 100% ryegrass, and we're going to have a look at that on another lawn in a minute. But it's without doubt, fine 1, which I'm standing on right now, is pretty thin as per the tubs themselves. The grasses are coming through strongly in the slots that we used in the overseeder, but we're not yet getting strong covering. We are getting some weeds. The slits that of course have been cut into the ground will have revealed weed seeds in the actual soil, which it would have exposed them. And so we are starting to get some of the grass weeds, which I'm really keen to spot treat those and kill those off while I've still got access to them without killing off great big spots of the grass that we're trying to grow as well. We'll move on to the other grasses and you can see how those are performing too. Fine 2, it's at 80% fescue and 20% bent grass. Again, a bit like fine 1, a bit thinner than I was really expecting, especially when I compare that with the mixtures with higher ryegrass. Again, I've got weeds which I want to take out on a spot treatment or maybe even with a penknife. But you know, the plant count is definitely there. It's just going to take more time to thicken up. When we move on then to quality 1, remember now we've got 70% ryegrass with a 30% creeping slender red fescue. So this is probably the one that I would have chosen if I was going to choose one with the limited amount of knowledge I have. It would have given me the striping, the disease resistance that ryegrass would have given me, but would also have given the creeping red fescue underneath, which will fill in all the gaps. So once creeping red fescue really starts to come in on this one, I'm really hoping this is going to knit up as well. Quality 2 is a bit more complex mix. We've got 40% ryegrass, we've got 30% slender creeping red fescue, 35% in fact, and we've got 20% chewing fescue and 5% brown top bent. So a bit more complex in terms of the mixture itself. I'm told that actually this is probably the real luxury lawn that we're going to say actually is going to really respond well to the mowing and also to the cultivation. It should give us a very thick sward and give us a lot of the advantages of each one of the varieties that we've got in there. One thing that's interesting in this is 150 square metres in this particular trial plot for quality 2, and it actually straddled a 5-year-old lawn which we overseeded and a lawn that was sown and wasn't actually particularly successful that we added on at a later stage, perhaps just 1 or 2 years later. And this has got a good strong thatch build up, and this barely had any thatch at all. And when we've overseeded into this section, it's now becoming very apparent that the overseeding that we did into the more thatchy lawn, 5 years old, is actually the germination is significantly less, and also the growth is significantly less on that. Whereas on this side, if you can see, the plants are much taller. This one is the 100% ryegrass. So this is the very oldest lawn that we've got. The thatch is very thick on it, and so we were taking a risk there anyway. But there's no doubt, although it was sown slightly earlier, the ryegrass is 100% ryegrass is really romping ahead in terms of the germination and the growth, just proving that the ryegrass really is much easier to get established. I've got weeds that are appearing as well, and I've already done some sample trials just in certain areas where the weed grasses are starting to pop through, and they're much easier to spot because it's 100% ryegrass, so the weed grasses are really sticking out. So I can give them a spot treatment with a little spray without killing off much grass around them, and I'm hoping to stay on top of that because I'd really like to get a very strong 100% ryegrass sward here that we can get striped up nice and strongly. This is the Shady mix. We've got it in an area where there's some large trees, so we're really interested to see how this responds to being in the shade. The mixture in this, 80% fescue, 15% smooth stalk meadowgrass and 5% brown top bent. It's been much slower to establish actually in the lawn here, and that was demonstrated and supported by what the results that we're getting in the tubs. This particular area of the lawn, the bane of this garden's life here is I've got mare's tail, which I'm going to have to find a way of treating, because I don't want it spreading, but at the same time it will mow out, so it's not going to be a problem. As with a lot of the other weeds that are coming through, as soon as we get mowing, then those will come out. So really interested to see how this responds and how it's going to thicken up. It's got lots of grasses in there that will creep, and this will fill up over time. So what are we going to do next? This is the ryegrass. It's now 50-60 millimeters high, and I need to now start to train that to be mown at that height, and I need to get the plants to tiller out to get the thickness of the sward. You can still see the lines very clearly where the overseed has been, so I need to create now more tillering to fill out all the gaps. I'm going to use a rotary mower for the first mow. I'm setting the rotary mower at 40 to 50 millimeters high, so I'm taking probably 20%, 15-20% of the plant height off. So I'm just going to be taking the tips off. I've already sharpened up the blades so they are absolutely razor sharp, and the reason for that is now as the rotary mower blade comes and cuts the blade of grass, of course, because it's a machete action, it will tug at the blade of grass. And the sharper that blade is, the less tugging it's going to give, and so the less root breakage or disturbance I'm going to get. I'm going to do it regularly, and by cutting a little and often, then it's going to give less disturbance to the grass plant, and by mowing it much higher than I intend it to be by the time we get into full growth, the longer the grass leaves are, then the longer the roots are, and I really need the roots now to be going down deeper into the soil. So as we start to approach summer, the sun's shining now, can I keep this irrigated well enough now to keep the growth going and not to allow these young plants to die? This was sown 2 months ago, actually, right at the end of March, and April this year I think has been the coldest in the UK for about 60 years. It was also really dry. We were having frost every night, so that first month actually very little happened in the month of April, and it's only since we got into May and it started to get up above 10 degrees centigrade regularly, and then now in the last couple of weeks as it's really warmed up and now we're up into the 20s, the grass is starting to grow really quite quickly. So now's the time to start mowing. So rotary mower set nice and high, blades really sharp, razor sharp, and I've also collecting all of the grass clippings. I don't want those to be disturbing anything. The next thing, which I'm also going to do today, is to put a fertilizer dressing on. We need to get some feed now. We need to get the plants really growing very vigorously. The reason I do the fertilizer spreading straight after the mowing is it's much easier to get the application rate even. So I'll have wheel marks from this 4-wheel rotary, and they'll all be spaced out nicely, and I'll be able to work to the wheel marks. I normally work to 2 or 3 widths of the mower for one run, then of the fertilizer spreader, depending on the application rate that I'm working on. I've just got a little old spinning disc spreader here. It's pretty regular and I get good results for that. Know how to use it now in terms of the overlap on the left hand and the right hand side. We're going to be putting a 2106 down at about 30-35 grams per square metre. And I'm hoping to see in the next couple of weeks then this really starting to get going, really green up, really thicken out. And I'm going to keep mowing this regularly, probably at least twice a week to keep up with just taking 10 mil of growth off at a time. So hopefully next video we'll see this lawn is really filled in and the fertiliser will have done its work. Thanks for watching.